Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are diving back into the Tell Me series by Charlotte Byrd. If you have not already listened to the first review for book one, that link is going to be available down below in the description section. So once you finish that review, come and join us as we dive into book two, and it's called Tell Me to Go. We pick up where we left off, which was them going to a resort. The resort is called Wale Lanai Resort and Spa, and they're playing Newlyweds. So they've gone downstairs. The resort is having like a casino night there, and he introduces them as Tom Landon. No, I'm sorry, Albert Landon. But when he says her name, he gives the last name like Tom. Oh, Landon, like a newlywed would, right? Because you're so used to the other name, and now you got to give the new one. Um, so that was actually pretty good. So there's different people there. They're mingling. There's a couple that comes up to them. They're celebrating a 10-year anniversary. They're from New Jersey. Thankfully, when she lies and she says that she used to go to the Jersey Shore on summers, she does remember the name of the place. It's called, I think, Cape May. And they were like, oh, yeah, we know where that is. It's not far from where we are. Um, he had told her, when you lie, make sure that it's with the truth. And that'll make it more believable because it's going to flow out of your mouth really easily. So when they asked her, what does she remember? What does she do? She says she's a content writer. We get a little bit more information about that. She's actually, she writes standardized tests. She does the math part. So she is working within her degree, but, this isn't like the dream job that she would want. She doesn't want to write tests for the rest of her life. The woman's name is Kathy, and her husband is Paul. Olivia, because that's what Olive is going by with this whole spiel. Um, she kind of gets stuck going with Kathy to go get a drink, and so Albert, aka Nicholas, has said, get me a whiskey, the one I like. Of course, she has no clue, but I figured, you know what? Whatever she brings back, he can always just act like that's his favorite. So they come back, in some kind of way, Nick fumbles the drink, spills it on the ground. Waiters immediately rush over to try and help. Olive, aka Olivia, she's trying to help as well. And then not too long after, he's like, we need to go. Before he leaves, he does say to the Paul guy, we'll have to get together and play around the golf. And the guy's like, yeah, okay. But he's totally focused on the table. So they leave, they go upstairs, pack their stuff. He tells her, we're not staying here. So, of course, when they get in the car, she wants answers. He explains what this whole thing was about. He holds up a diamond tennis bracelet. This was Kathy's bracelet. So she's like, why do you have that? So he tells the story. So there was this really rich guy. His wife had passed away. The guy had a sale of all her stuff, like an estate sale, but he kept her jewelry. He doesn't know of any type of break-in or anything like that occurred at his home. But some kind of way Paul got it. Paul's a dentist, but he also runs a bookie service on the side. And Paul also has a mistress, a girlfriend, who is pregnant with their second child. Yes, I said second child. And he is going to leave Kathy when they get back to Jersey. So this is the second marriage for both Kathy and Paul. He apparently got burned really badly in the first divorce. So what he's done is he's brought her here. He's going to give her like $4,000 a month. And he knows she'll think that's a good deal. He's going to cave in and let her keep the house. So it's going to appear as if he's really hurting. But he has nasty money. But she's not going to know that. So I'm just like, God dang, that's just so slimy. But then again, if you already carrying on and got a whole relationship, I mean, I can't really be too shocked by what you would do, right? So they're on this trip celebrating a 10-year anniversary, but it's really just to coddle her before he's about to really bring the hammer down on her. But however, Nicholas was hired to get the tennis bracelet back because Kathy doesn't think it's real. She doesn't realize that that thing is worth over $1 million. She thinks it's like some Swarovski, I can't even say it right now, crystal bracelet that's like $500. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he takes these type of jobs and he makes a lot of money off of them, Nicholas. But I'm like, but it's got to be something else because he seems to have nasty money. It's got to be something else that he does. So while they're in the car, of course, she's thinking like I'm thinking, like, okay, you're doing this, but like you got to be doing something else too. But then she starts to panic because she's like, oh my gosh, we're going to get caught. Like we were the only ones there for like 30 minutes. They're going to know it was us. Like literally, we left not too long after it happened. She's picturing this mugshot. She's thinking about, oh my gosh, I would lose my job. Like she's spiraling. He's like, that's not going to happen. So she's pissed that he's a little too calm. She's like, that's how you rich people do. Like nothing ever happens to you. It's the other people that wind up taking the hit. So then he says no because I switched him out. And she has one now with Swarovski crystals. And again, she doesn't know it's real, right? So when they get the divorce, what's going to happen, Paul is going to think that she's just not trying to give it back. So they're never going to think back to this trip. I mean, which is, it's pretty smart. So I'm like, that is really smart. So then she's like, take me to the airport. He calls her bluff. He turns around. And she's like, you're really going to take me there? And see, this is the type of shit I do not like. I don't like when people play games like this. You know damn well you don't want to fucking leave. So don't say stuff like that. Stop daring people to do shit. It's stupid, Because he had his blinker on and he was going to take her. And then, of course, she caves. And she's like, well, not tonight, I don't want to get on a long flight tonight. I'm tired. And she says, well, for tonight, I'll stay. So he turns and he heads back towards his house. She pissed me off with that little stunt. They get back to the house. There's no staff because he apparently gave him off a few days. And then he tells her to meet him for a drink. She's like, okay, just let me freshen up. So then he made the comment in the car pretty much like he knew someone with her skills would be really good for running these type of cons, basically. And she's thinking like, how in the heck did he find out? So now it's looking like it's not just this thing about the dead sister, right? This is looking like it's a bigger picture thing. But then I'm like, well, what was she doing that made him think she would be good at this? Before we get more detail about her past, she wants to negotiate. So she's like, okay, but I want 40% of the cut. And he's kind of like, no. So they're going back and forth. And he will not go above 15%. He started out with 10%. And so she agreed at the 15%. She, of course, works in Still No Sex. And that was more so for herself, not for him. That's for her to say it. And he told her again, I already told you, you'll be begging me for it. So then he says, deal is contingent upon how you do tomorrow. And she's like, okay. And he tells her, hopefully you're not a prude. She winds up sleeping for like 12 hours. When she gets up, she goes for a swim. And we get our backdrop. So in high school, girl used to boost clothes, costume jewelry with a friend of hers. Well, the friend got caught. Can't remember the name. I think it started with the name. And it scared Olive straight. It didn't scare the friend straight, but the friend had money, so for her it was more of a thrill, right? And so she was like, because if I go to jail, my mom's not coming to get me out. So she stopped. So she's thinking about the offer, and you got to think her student loan debt is paid. $1 million on top of that, 15% of the take for each job. Like, this is life changing money. But what's really pulling her is the strong pull that she has towards Nicholas. So when he comes in, when she comes in from her swim, on her bed there's a box and it says, "Wear this tonight in C." So she tries to be gentle, open it up because the packaging is just so beautiful, but then it was taking too much, so then she just rips it open. So it's this whole sexy getup that she has to put on. It's got a corset that comes with it. I'm thinking this has got to be some type of orgy party. It's just got to be. So Nicholas knocks on the door. She's not ready yet. She mostly has everything on, but he winds up helping her with some stuff. She has body image issues, but when she sees herself in the mirror, she's like, "Damn, girl, you look good," because everything accentuates her. Like, the boobs look amazing, the butt looks amazing, like the hips, everything looks great in this less of clothing. um, he of course is staring at her. She's staring at him. They're having moments. At one point, she even put her finger on his bottom lip. He sucked it, but nothing else happened. And so now they're on their way to the party. On their way to the party, they have a little conversation. We get a little backdrop. So she didn't just use the boost from stores. When she was in college, she was still stealing. The Tiffany necklaces were all the rage. And so one night she racked up like 10 grand in these necklaces, and she would replace them with these fake Tiffany necklaces. I was like, dang. So what happened is afterwards she would feel so guilty at night, like gut wrenching guilt. And so she went to counseling, and even though they gave all these steps to help her stop, she just quit cold turkey. And so Nicholas knew about this, and she just kind of trying to figure out, like, nobody knew about this. Like, how did you find out? He was just like, just because you never got caught doesn't mean anyone didn't suspect what you were doing. But of course, he's not going to reveal his source. So they get to the party, and yes, it is a sex party, and they tell the woman their name. This time they are Thomas and Meredith Puglisi. Basically, the woman tells them at the door, there's different rooms for different things. Some are for socializing, some are just for women, some are just for men, some are for groups. And she's starting to feel herself, like she's getting a little bit self-conscious, but then she does feel sexy, and she's getting in the mood. And so she unbuttons Nicholas' shirt, and she's just kind of like, okay, it's time to play. She notices that there are other eyes on her as well, not just Nicholas's. They go and sit down with a couple. The guy's name's Jack. The woman's name is Danica. Danica's touching on Nicholas. Olive is feeling some jealousy. Well, then the Jack guy, he's like staring at Olive, and then the Danica woman leans over and touches Olive's thigh. And then Jack and Danica like kiss right in front of Olive. And so Olive realizes, okay, it's cool to touch. So she starts touching on Jack's chest. And then all of a sudden, Nicholas jumps up and is like, we got to go. When they get down the hallway, she, of course, asks him, like, are you jealous? Because he appears to be, like, really angry. He, of course, is like, of course I'm not jealous. So they go to another room, and this one has more action. Okay, there's threesomes going on. And it's turning her on. and Nicholas as well. So they're caressing. She winds up taking. I'm sorry. He winds up taking off one of her bra. He's sucking on her titty, and she's enjoying this, and she's like grabbing at his dick and stuff. But he still hasn't taken it out. But she sees a woman in front of her that is about to get pleased by two men, and when the woman looks up, guess who it is? It's freaking Sydney. Of course, the first thing they say to each other is like, "What are you doing here?" They wind up going off to go talk, but before they leave, Nicholas does whisper to Olive, like, "You don't tell her anything." And we also find out that our boy James is there too. He was in the little orgy as well. So we find out that old girl Sydney has been going to sex parties since college. Apparently, this couple that they went to school with, Elise and I forget the name of the husband. They're married now. They used to have these sex parties in college. They actually still have them now that even though they're in the suburbs. She had no idea, and so she's shocked. It's not judgment. It's just shock because she's like, "Oh my gosh, you never told me." And she's like, "I don't know, it's a part of myself I kind of put away because the ex-boyfriend, he didn't like that side of her, so she just kind of put it away under lock and key." But with James, she let him know what she was into, and he was all up for it as well. So he seems to be enjoying himself. So then she's like, "Okay, now spill, what are you doing here?" She pretty much does tell the truth. She just doesn't say anything about the con. She can't tell that much about the con anyway because she doesn't really know who they're there to see, what they're getting. She has no idea. So she tells the truth about what's really going on as far as on her end. And so she just says that, she wanted to basically be able to touch him in some type of a different um, environment, basically. She does admit to this massive attraction, all this type of stuff. She definitely wants her friend to know, like, he didn't like forcing me to come here or nothing like that. It's kind of like we're role playing, okay? So that's more so what she tells her. Well, after she's done, Sydney tells her, be careful because Nicholas Crawford is trouble. So they're going to leave the party. James, of course, is like, you guys come back to my place. We can have a drink. So they're gonna go back there. Nicholas tells Olive, like, the Mark, he's only gonna be here for this party. So we'll go to their place, we'll have a drink, but we've got to come back. And she's like, okay, cool. So they go to James's place. James has been all over the world. We find out he's originally from Southern California. Basically came here, fell in love with the place, and didn't want to leave. He, of course, does say he would consider moving back to the States, like for the right person situation. But he would like for Sydney to move to Maui. And James is kind of like, both of you should, stay here. Like, you're not going to meet anyone like us on the mainland. And Nicholas tells the half truth and says that, he wanted her to come back. That he had asked her to give him a real chance. So again, it's the truth with the lie, but I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit more truth with him, but he's so he's mysterious. We don't know everything. So then he does whisper to Olive, like, we gotta go. They wind up not being able to go back because the Mark has left. Apparently, he only flew in for those couple of hours for this party, and he's on his way back to New York. So Nicholas is kind of grumpy about it. He doesn't give her really any more information about the Mark. And while they're in the car on the way back to his place, he's like, what do you think about seeing Sydney there? And she's like, I was shocked, but he didn't mean it like about that, really. It was more so he's like, pretty much, how did you feel about it? And she's like, I mean, I understood it was for a job and stuff like that, but it was a really sexy atmosphere. And he says, if we were actually together, like, would you have gotten mad if I would have asked you to go to something like that, um she didn't really answer. She's like, I really don't know, right? And so then he's telling her again the terms of the agreement haven't changed. The whole I'm still going to make you beg for it and all this kind of crap. And she says, of course, challenge accepted. Next morning, she goes and takes a couple of laps in the pool. Nicholas comes up. He still seems upset. He's like, basically, I need an answer. Like, have you thought about my offer? Like, what are you doing? And she wants to know how she'll be paid. Is it going to be every 2 weeks, every month? And he goes, every 2 weeks, done. And she says, well, I need to put in my actual resignation letter to my job. And he's like, okay, do it today. And so she goes in, she does the letter to her job, and then she checks her other email account, which is how she talks with her brother, Owen. And they're really close. Well, now they are. They weren't really close growing up, but once he got locked up, like pretty much ever since that night before he went in, they have been really close and they've talked a lot. And I mean, we're talking multiple times a week. They're talking every day. He's sending something to her, via the email. So we find out that he's dyslexic. He didn't know that. The mother always just used to call him lazy, but the dude had a whole problem. The last letter he sends is like, I'm really worried about you, because she hasn't talked to him in a few days. He's like, just don't go dark on me. If I've done something wrong, like, tell me something. I'm your older brother. I'm worried. So she messages him back, I'm fine. I've met someone. I'm in Hawaii. I'm with Sydney, all this type of stuff. Try to keep it light, But she still gets a call from the correctional facility. Owen's calling her. He, of course, wants to know what's going on. She's trying to alleviate this little panic. And he's just kind of like, okay, I'm listening. So she says, well, I met someone. Well, then he says, well, mom came and saw me. She said you paid off her debt. Where did you get that money? She's pissed, and she says to him, she set someone up to make me pay that money. You know what I mean? And of course, he's like, I can't believe she do that. So he still has a soft spot for her as well, even more so than Olive. And he still wants to know, though, who's this guy? Is he some old fart? He wants details. She's like, yes, this person has money. He has different businesses. Owen's like, oh, well, his father must have really set him up. And she's like, no, he's worked really hard for his money. But she let it slip that he was from Boston, their neck of the woods. And she thought, like, fuck. I shouldn't have said that. But it's too late. Owen is on to her. Owen yells, you're fucking with Nicholas Crawford? She's like, no, it's not the same guy. But after he describes him, he says he used to go by Nikki Reed. Then he changed his name to Nikki C. That's who it is. It's him, he says. And she, of course, is still saying, no, it's not him. It's not the same guy. But Owen knows this is him. He's like, yeah, he was really great at starting fires. So when people didn't pay their rent or whatever they owed, the boss would have him set the fire because the insurance always paid, because he knew how to do the fires. So then he started running cons up in Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard area, getting lots of high-end jewelry. And he found a guy that made a replica of everything. It would have the same weight, so the owners didn't realize it off the rip that something was missing. And months and months down the road, found out that, the boss found out he'd been doing it, but he was long gone by then. But he tells her, you need to stay away from him. You run as far away as you can from that man. He is dangerous. Owen's time is up, so he's got to get off the phone, but he calls right back. So he must have got more time. But then he insults her. He makes the comment, for someone so smart, you really are stupid. And she said to him, please don't speak to me that way. I already take enough of that from mom. He, of course, felt horrible. He's like, I'm so sorry. But I'm just like, you shouldn't have said no shit like that. How do you fucking think that's going to get your point across? You got to insult me to make me do something? That's not gonna make me do something. You're just gonna make me not want to do it even more. So he pissed me off. I was like, I don't like him. Like, I did not like that. Especially, you're grown up in this household, but then that's also the thing. You know how you pick up those fucked up traits. But it's like, nah, especially if she just told you what that woman just did to her to try and con money out of her, and that's your response to her? Yeah, Owen is shit to me. I don't like him. And he could be right about Nicholas. We don't know yet. He could be, but he pissed me off with that. He says to her, I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. I'm just really concerned about your safety. You're in danger. He tells her about the fact that he has a parole hearing. He wants her to come to testify. So I'm like, is that why he was really blowing her phone up? That's when I be feeling kind of suspicious. So you had a motive for blowing her phone up. Was it really concern, or was it that you got this hearing and you need her there? Again, I'm not a fan of Owen at this point. I'm just not. That might change. I don't know. But right now, don't like him. So this parole hearing is in 2 days. And he's still talking about Nicholas. He doesn't go into full detail. He just says, he's done stuff, but he's hiding clearly most of it. He pretty much just wants her to know he's dangerous, get away from him, but he's not going into full detail. Because you just telling me somebody set fires for their boss. I mean, yeah, it's a little crazy, okay? I'm not going to say it's not, that you're starting fires, but then again, okay, were you being forced to do it? And why were you being forced to do it? Like, give me the whole picture. You know what I'm saying? So he hasn't said anything in my opinion, that like, oh my gosh, she's so, he's scary. You know what I mean? He's not telling her anything. And I'm like, well, if you don't tell her everything, she's not going to do what you think, or what you want her to do. She doesn't promise him that she's coming. She just says pretty much like, I'll try to make it. Later on, she goes outside. She's enjoying the rain. Nicholas pops up, and she of course is like, what are you doing? No, he tells her, what are you doing? She's like, you don't ever just enjoy the rain? He's like, no, I don't have time. So then he's like, goes to her, it's either her phone or computer. No, computer. And he asked her, who do you know in jail? She's like, why are you asking me that? And he's like, I went to look up the weather and I see this. And she's like, that's my brother Owen. He's doing 17 years for armed robbery. He flinches a little. But when she asked him if he knew him, he was slow to answer. But then he said that he didn't know him. So she knows he's lying. So they have dinner. She tells him, she's going to go to the parole hearing. And he's just kind of like, how are you going to get there? She says, I have enough money to buy a ticket to get back. He's like, that's not what our arrangement is, You're supposed to be at my disposal. And she said again, I wasn't asking you. I'm telling you, like, this is what's going to happen. She storms off. He comes after her. They start kissing in the rain. It gets intense. They go inside the cottage. His dick's out. She's ready. And he says he wants her to beg. She says no to the begging. And he says, well, then you don't get this. And then he pulls up off of her. So she, of course, is kind of pleading with him. Like, why is it such a big deal? When it comes to the whole her going back to Boston for her brother's, I'm finna say hearing, and I know that's not it. What is it called again? His parole hearing. There we go. And she's like, I'm going to be right back. It's like 2 days. He's like, there's no personal time with this offer. So she, of course, is like, how could you be so cruel? He eventually tells her, if you want to go, I'll buy you a ticket. But then after that, I never want to see you again. That's it. She, of course, is like, why did you even want me to come here? He says, because I thought we could help each other. But clearly I see that I was wrong. And I'm just like, well, damn, all of that? Like, it causes that type of a reaction? Like, shit. She's begging him. You know, she's like, why won't you just let me do this one thing? I'm still committed to the year. You know, why won't you let me help my brother? And he, of course, is like, it's too dangerous. He's like, you just don't understand all this type of stuff, you know? And he cracks a little bit. And when she's begging him to reconsider, she's like, you wanted me to beg? I'm begging. Like, I'm demeaning myself. And he was like, I never wanted you to demean yourself. And I'm like, nah, maybe you kind of did, you know? Like, if you're trying to make someone do something that's completely outside of their character, you're trying to break them. You're trying to make them, that could be considered demeaning to them, right? Um, Especially depending on how prideful of a person that they are. So he tells her that the mark is actually still on the island. He pretty much knows that there's an escort that is supposed to be going to his hotel room. So he intercepted this information. So she's like, okay, well, then I can go see him, you know, and then we can do the deal. And I can go back to Boston. And he is like, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to, you know, if this could work. You know, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. So then he shows her the outfit that she would have to wear. And it's basically bra with the nipples out, panties crotchless, you know. He's like, can you do this? So basically what he needs her to do, go on with this guy. She's going to be the distraction. The first thing she asks is, you know, do I need to sleep with him? And he says no so fast. He doesn't give too much information. Like, he's actually, I'm kind of like, she needs to know. If she's going in there, like, you need to tell her everything she needs to know. You know, and she's thinking of these different things. She's like, you know, how will I know if it's safe for me to go? You know, how are you going to get me out? You know, he says you'll get a call and then you can leave. Then she's like, okay, but what if something goes wrong? He's like, that's the whole problem. So now he's out. He's like, this isn't a good idea. You know, I always have plans and, you know, I know exactly what's going on. But he's like, at the house, I knew what was going on. I knew where he would be. But this is not planned properly. So he doesn't have as much confidence in it. And I'm still kind of wondering, or is this just him putting up a front to get her to do it, right? I don't know. Because now she needs something from him. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical, of course, when it comes to him. So he tells her he knows where the laptop is going to be, and then he can make an exchange, you know, then he can exchange it out, you know. He's like, but he doesn't know the layout of the room. He does have a master key, so that's how he'll be able to get himself in. But the problem is he doesn't know that the lay of the land, so he's got to try and figure out where the laptop is going to be. So this whole thing is about it. It's a laptop slip. And she's like, okay, I'll distract so you can get it. She's like, I can do this. The girl's already quit a job. She's committed. You know, she's all in at this point. He's still freaking out because of all the contingencies that she starts bringing up. Like, they're real, right? They make sense that she has these concerns. And he's like, nah, too much can go wrong. He's like, is an actual killer. So that raises the stakes. She goes back to her cottage. She's got an hour before she is scheduled to be now at that hotel because she's decided she's doing this. She says, you know, she's just going to do it. She's going to do it by herself. She finds the replica laptop while he's in the shower. She grabs the outfit, gets some keys out of the bowl because there's a bunch in it. It lights up her Mercedes. She gets out of there. She arrives about a few minutes before 8. She goes into the store. She has this confidence. She learned early on, even if you don't know what you're doing, you still need to act like you do. You need to act like you belong. And so she goes up to the guy's room. His name is Dallas Stone. She was expecting a different type of person, but like, this man oozes sex. And she tells him her name's Abigail. And she says it so, you know, she's so confident with it, that he's buying what she's selling, right? And he's staring at her, and she likes what she sees, and she's thinking like, you know what? Before I do this, maybe I will fuck him first. So she's, feeling sexy and confident. He's rubbing all over her. He's rock hard. He's turning her on. But she's turned on by the fact that it kind of feels like she's saying F you to Nicholas, as well as being here, and she's about to like basically fuck this man and imagine the man being Nicholas. And then there's a knock on the door, and it's the actual escort. Her name's Rosemary. But she thinks that this is a game because our girl Abigail, aka Olive, is kind of like, oh, you ready to play? And the girl's like, oh, I didn't know they were gonna, you know, send more than one. But now it's like, okay, this works out because the guy is like, oh, two of you. So he's super excited, right? He gets on his knees. He starts sucking on the Rosemary girl's breast. She's thinking like, okay, I need to make the switch. I need to get out of here. But the laptop is all the way across the room near the bedroom. So then she says, let's take this to the bed. Our girl makes the switch, and she gets the hell up out of there. Nicholas calls her phone, but he actually shows up, and he tells her to get in the car. But she's like, "I brought a car." So she gets in the vehicle, the Mercedes. He calls her. He's pissed at her, and I think he's more upset. I don't know. He could be more upset because this is a lot more dangerous than she had realized. Especially with him saying that this guy is a killer, right? So I think that could be why. Um, I don't know with him, right? So she says to him, like, basically, I got it done. And he tells her he's her boss, and she's like, we're partners. He's like, bosses put money in people's accounts. So I'm your boss. Well, that pissed her off, and she hung up. He keeps calling back, but she won't answer. The GPS is taking her back to his place. She's not ready to go there, so she winds up going to the beach. He comes up and he does apologize. But then he says, like, he's like, but, and she's like, don't do that. That negates the whole apology. He's like, I'm sorry. I said I was your boss. And she confirmed to him she got the job done. She's like, doesn't that change anything? And he says that changes everything. So she tells him that, the reason of why she did it. And she's like, I'm all my brother has in the world right now, you know? And as well as she needs to get paid because she's put everything into this. So she needed to prove to him that she could do this job. He tells her, I was going to pay you. He was like, I was never not going to pay you. And he does apologize for telling her she couldn't go to her brother. He's like, I shouldn't have done that. Then she was saying, hell, like, Dallas was so fine that she had planned on, she was going to have sex with him. She's like, because it had been so long since she'd been with anyone. And so she was down for it. And he's like, you were going to do that with him? And she was like, yeah. And he's like, you don't understand again how dangerous that man is and all this type of stuff. But then they start kissing and they're on the beach. He's hard. He's got his thing out. He actually is ready to do it. She tells him, like, I want you. But then he asked her if she was on birth control, and she said no. He didn't have any condoms, and she doesn't play like that. So she knows she's not ready for kids. So she was like, okay, well, we can't do it. But they were going to do other stuff. So what they wound up doing was basically he tells her that he wants to watch her pleasure herself. And so they make themselves come, and then they go in the ocean and start kissing again. And then he says, I can't let you go to Boston by yourself. So she's back in Boston. She's at the parole hearing. And they're asking him, like, basically, why didn't you drive off? Like, why did you do it? And he says, well, we've been drinking. They had run out of liquor, so they went to the Five and Dime and they were stealing chips. And then the clerk, who was a Korean man, saw that they were stealing, took out his bat and started yelling at him in Korean. So the rest of the guys ran, but one of them pulled out a gun and shot. So it didn't hit the guy. It was uh, uh, what is it, lodged in the wall. But when they ran, to the car, they were just like, go, 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 go. So he drove. So his initial stance was that he stayed in the car because it was cold and that he didn't know what was going on. Now he's saying that he had an inkling of what might have happened because they had been talking about something like this um, earlier. And I'm like, but they were stealing chips and sodas. Like, they didn't steal money. That's what's just so weird to me. It's still chips and soda. So where does the whole pulling out a gun come into place? It just doesn't equate to, going to do some serious crime. It just doesn't. She realized that this is different from what he had said in the trial, but Olive knows, the real answer is what he said in the trial. The brother doesn't like to go run errands. He just prefers to stay in the car, especially when it's cold. Owen tells the parole board, he learned from his mistakes. And then she realized that's why he was doing it, because he's got to be able to sound like he's learned his lesson. If he sticks to what actually happened, it sounds like there's no growth, right? So that's the reason he said what he said. He also, we find out, could have only gotten just a year if he had testified against his friends, but he wasn't going to do that. And so she does get, now he's trying to play this game of chess. So then she gets up there, she talks, she gives her speech. It couldn't be what she had initially wanted to say. She just pretty much tells him about the upbringing with the mother, the father leaving, stuff like that, him falling into a bad crowd. She's like, this isn't me trying to paint you a picture or like trying to say poor him. It's just to paint a picture of why certain decisions were made. So the parole board is all, basically they're demonizing him for learning to read, because they're like, now you know how to manipulate. So if you're off the streets, then you're not a threat. So that's really crazy to me, because it's like, you're saying that the purpose of this is to rehabilitate, but now you're saying that it might not necessarily be rehabilitation. This just might be you being able to now manipulate us, right? So it's like, it's just, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So they're going to let them know what the decision is. We don't know when. They just eventually let you know. So she's outside with the attorney. This isn't the initial attorney that was on the case. That person quit. And this attorney gives her some good tea. So it's not just that her brother hung out with a bad crowd. This dude was a whole dealer, and he was a well-known dealer in the neighborhood. So the guys that he was with the night that this happened was higher up in the organization, aka this is organized crime. So she's looking at the lawyer like, what are you talking about? Because Owens never said anything about that, right? They've written so much, but he's never talked about his past. And now it makes sense as to why. So when they picked up Owen, this is why they threw the book at him, because they could never catch him doing the real shit, right? So when they got him on this, they're like, we got him. Nicholas came to pick her up. They go to dinner. She's trying to do this 30-day thing, no bread, no sugars, and all that type of stuff. She's started and stopped this diet so many times. She's trying to stay committed to it, so she just ordered like some salmon and vegetables. And he's like, Nicholas is like, okay, you're going to tell me what happened? So she's trying to demand the truth out of him as well, because her finding this stuff out about her brother, now she really wants to know, how the hell do you know my brother? Because I know you lied when you said you didn't know him. So what is all of this stuff? Like, what's going on? So she does tell him about what happened during the parole hearing. And Nicholas, of course, is like, people have secrets for a reason. And she's like, are you ever going to tell me fully what, you do? And she tells him, I'm not doing another job if I don't know everything. And he tells her, that's not how this is going to be. That's not what I agreed to. She's like, well, I'm not going to do anything else until you tell me everything about the future jobs. And again, he tells her, I can't promise you that. You know? And he drops a bomb on her and says, the woman, Rosemary, the woman that you were with, because he doesn't know her name. He's like, the woman that was in the hotel room with you that night in Dallas's room, she's dead. So she, of course, is like, Rosemary? Like, how? Well, they found her body in the woods. Some hikers did. And he's pretty sure Dallas is the one who did it. So he doesn't know, how do I say, if, and he says this to her, and this plays with her head. He's like, I don't know if it's because he found out that the laptop was switched and he thought she had something to do with it, or if he just was going to take her out anyway. He doesn't know. This, of course, does not make her feel good. This makes her feel bad, because now it feels like, okay, I made this decision to go and do this con, and I could have possibly gotten someone taken out. So it's like, because you were trying to prove yourself, and it's like, was it really worth it? I don't know. I don't know if it would have necessarily changed anything either. Like, what if this guy has a thing for taking out escorts? Like, we don't know. So, I don't know. But she, of course, feels horrible. He says he set up his headquarters in Maui because he knew the guy was going to be coming to these parties. And he had been there for over a year. So, he had pretty much been waiting for this guy to come. So, he really does do the long con. He really does. He didn't realize and he didn't know Sydney and James were freaky. So that threw a wrench in the plan. But again, she feels awful. So she takes him back to her apartment because she really didn't want to go to the Ritz-Carlton. There's about 6 months left on the lease. Still doesn't know what Sydney's going to do. She texts her. And it's still all up in the air. She doesn't know. She's going to be traveling the world. Is there really going to be a point in keeping this place? So that's the question. And so then she tells him that she wants him, and they wind up kissing each other. And she's like, this is me telling you I want to fucking do this. And so she says to him, like, I want you to fuck me from the back, hard and fast. And so she has her hands on the counter. She raises up her skirt. He takes off her G-string. And all of a sudden, she hears, get the fuck off her. So this person has a gun pointed to Nicholas's head. And he says, I'm just here to get her. And Nicholas, being cool, calm, and collect. And in a really quick moment, the guy falls to the floor, gunshot right between his eyes. And she's like, oh my gosh, we got to call the police. He's like, absolutely not. He checks the guy. There's no identification. He says, this is clearly a professional. And she says, a professional what? He says, killer. So, of course, now she's thinking, like, why would anyone want to kill me? I haven't done anything. He calls someone named Katharine Hepburn. And she's like, and he says level 5. A few minutes later, a woman comes in her 50s. She doesn't look like Katharine Hepburn, but she gives off that air about herself. And then 2 guys come in behind her with this daily moving company outfits and stuff. And they have bags big enough for bodies. So they clean everything up. They're making it look like, she called this moving company and they're coming to move some stuff to storage. And then also there's a rug company that's in New York that she owns, and she came to pick up this rug. It's going to be sold. It's like a place to sell to a third party or whatever. So they've got a full plan. Um, she has this little thingy that can tell if there's blood splatter, this light, and she makes sure everything's all set because there wasn't a lot of blood because it just hit him right in the middle of the head, so it wasn't that much. um the guys that are moving stuff are talking about the Patriots, so this looks like it really is some people coming to move some stuff, so they finally leave, and she of course is like, why didn't we call the police? And before the woman, also I forgot, the woman gave her a check for like 700 and some dollars, and that was to cover her selling her rug to this company. So when she asks, why he didn't call the police, he says, I gotta tell you something. I'm like, oh gosh. So he tells her that Owen has basically ratted someone out, okay? And that's why he got this hearing so fast. And because of who he ratted out, a contract has now been put out on Olive's head. So since because they could get to him in jail, but I think it's about suffering, right? And the best way to make someone suffer is to hurt someone they love. And so that's why this is now being done. So then he tells her, that's why I didn't want you to come back. And that's why pretty much this whole protection gig he came up with, this offer for her, only a small portion that was about, the promise to Ashley, So then she gets a phone call. It's from Owen. He's been granted parole. So she's shocked, but she now knows this information. And so she does something that's really stupid to me. She asks him over the phone, like, what did you do to get out? And he's like getting pissed off that she would even ask him that. And I'm like, girl, this shit is recorded. Like, why is your dumb ass asking this question over the phone? Like, come on. You're not finna get no answer over the phone. That was stupid. I get you're pissed. I get you upset. But I need you to get in the right mind frame. You just see what just happened in your home, right? So you need to tighten up a little bit. So eventually she says to him, I'm just in shock, and tries to push it off on that. And then she tells him she's going to be there to pick him up the next morning. He's like, about 6 a.m., but it could be later. She's like, that's fine. I'll be there. Yeah, they tell each other they love each other. And he tells her how much he appreciates her taking the time to talk to him all this time while he's been in prison. They hang up. Nicholas tells her, you can't go pick him up. Absolutely not. And that's how it ends. So the next book in the series is called Tell Me to Stay. And so we are going to dive into that one next week. What did you guys think of this one? I liked it. A lot of action. This really would make a great movie. I'm just saying. It really would. The scene at the sex party was so fun to read. Her wanting to make Nicholas jealous is just funny to me. But it is, because it's like he's not trying to admit that stuff gets to him, and she's trying to find a way to kind of pull it out of him. It's crazy. But I thought it was a really good read. Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comments and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and those links are going to be available down below as well. Make sure you like and subscribe. I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.